Scripted within an ancient tome, which lies beneath centuries of dust in the guarded library of Mechalon, is the story of how the rift was formed. Though most cannot recall a time when the rift did not divide the Enclave and the Outlands, they were at one time unified. At that time, there were lands where the very essence of magic was believed to dwell, for they were lush and prosperous. All who did not hold the secrets of the soil, which were protected by the Pact of Jifuro, coveted these lands fiercely. The great demon Vatar was among these envious creatures, for he believed that with the magic of these lands in his grasp, he would surely become invincible. And so, he led his army to attack the dwellers of the land and lay claim to it for himself. The battle raged on and on, until at last the mighty wizard Zale stood alone against Vatar to protect the lands. When all hope seemed lost and Vatar's victory imminent, Zale struck the final fatal blow. With a roar of anger and anguish, the wizard slammed his staff into the ground. The world trembled and then parted beneath Vatar's feet. A scream of outrage erupted from the demon's throat as he fell to his defeat. However, victory did not come without a price. The chasm that grew from this powerful blast of magic was too vast to be traversed, and the people were separated as much as the lands. Those who had come to aid their brothers in fighting against the demon's army returned to their home, called Mechalon, with stunned minds and heavy hearts. The Pact of Jifuro had been broken, and they had become separated from their brothers. The denizens of the Outlands, a dark and selfish people, became known as the Dreg Attar, and the Enclave of Magic Land, which had been divided from the rest, formed a peaceful city called Selenheim. In time, all wounds are healed, for in the lengthy span since it was torn asunder, it seems that the magic inherent within the world has begun to knit the land back together. The rift grows smaller and can even be crossed in certain locations. Though it should be a time of celebration and rejoicing, such is not the case. For despite the passage of time, the greedy Dregatar still lust after the lands of magic. Raid after raid has been sent into the Enclave in hopes of weakening it for the major attack the Dregatar intend to wage as soon as they are able. Crops burned and possessions stolen, Selenheim has been thrown into a state of extreme unrest. Heavy taxes are levied upon the people to help pay for the city's defense. This has led to uprisings within the Enclave, and some of its inhabitants have landed in jail, along with the true enemy. And it is here that our story begins, a few rebellious grains of sand within the ever-turning hourglass of life. They had won the battle against the Outland Raiders and driven them from Selenheim's soil, and victory was sweet upon their tongues as they set out upon the perilous journey before them. This was their chance to redeem themselves and aid their people. But so many things were unknown, unexplained. Who were these ancestors that Marcus spoke of? Why had Queen Eilendelle not sent for them before now? Without time to confer with the Queen, they began. They would have to cross the vast expanse of the dreaded Outlands and find these mysterious people who might be able to help. Yet not even Marcus seemed certain that the ancestors still existed, or how they would receive visitors if they did. As the sun descended, they came to the divided city. Once magnificent and proud, the rift had reduced it to nothing more than crumbled buildings and jagged rooftops. Now, as one of the only places where it's possible to cross the rift, dark and twisted shapes await those who wish to traverse it. The smoke rose high into the sky, blotting out the sun with its ink-like message. Kamsara's fortress was no more. This signal could be seen for miles. It would alert the ancestors and the outlanders alike. Wearily, they began to make their way back toward Selenheim. Tension was high, for they knew they had helped in breaking the Great Pact of Jifuro once more, and they had not had a chance to speak to the Queen before they departed on this journey. Would they be hailed as heroes for bringing aid? Or would they be sent to the gallows for their horrific deed? Rumors of Mordessa's vast armies turned out to be quite accurate. Day and night, the travelers were forced to hide among rocks and crevices, while troop after troop of nightmarish creatures passed by. The massive, twisted beasts and demons were a clear sign that the underworld itself was massing for battle. The ancient name of the mighty demon Vatar was often heard uttered among them reverently. The travelers knew there was very little time left indeed. At last, Selenheim Castle was in view, but they would soon face their greatest challenge yet. Though the ancestors acclaimed them as heroes after showing such valor and bravery in the defense against the Outland invasion, something seemed oddly amiss. The ancestors had been estranged from their brothers in Selenheim longer than anyone could remember, yet very little negotiation was needed for them to accept the perilous request to send aid against the hordes of Dregatar. The eager offer to assist their downtrodden brothers came at only one request: destroy the fortress of Kamsara. The Pact of Jifuro forbids such destruction, but the ancestors explained that it was their only hope of reaching the battle in time. For the pass of Kamsara, held tightly by the enemy, was the only obstacle in the fastest route to Selenheim. Being a narrow path, Kamsara was easily defended. It allowed very few men to keep an entire army at bay if need be, and it would be far too difficult if it were not destroyed. Desperate times called for desperate measures. The legendary High Wizard Zale was their last hope. Known as the Scourge of Vatar, the Bane of Zurana, the man who severed the world, Zale must be found. If he still lived, and they were able to find him, would he help them? And what cost would the world pay this time for its salvation from evil? The battle had begun. Vastly outnumbered, the armies of Selenheim were constantly in retreat towards the castle itself. Vatar's hordes crossed the rift, smashed through the defenses and pursued them. It seemed hopeless, but the death of the ancient demon came as a miracle. Echoing through the mountains and out over the fields, the sound of his final agony reached the ears of Enclavers and Outlanders alike. The Outlanders froze in their tracks, eyes widened in horror. It could not be. Vatar was undefeatable. Only moments later, the first of the Mechalon troops arrived in a cloud of dust and banners over the horizon. Mercilessly, they crashed into the confused Dragatar horde's rear and flanks. With a new boost of morale, the soldiers of Selenheim cried out their allegiance to their queen and valiantly took up arms once more. Without their leader and surrounded, Vatar's horde was quickly diminished and soon annihilated. History would not be allowed to repeat itself. As the chaos of battle gradually faded into silence, the small party of adventurers returned to Selenheim, soon to be celebrated as heroes. As Queen Eilendel, Princess Jacindra, and the Assembly of Six were praising them for their valiant efforts, Electo of Mechalon stepped into the chamber unannounced. Boldly, he asserted his authority as the savior of the Enclave. Angered by such arrogance, the Queen and her council were quick to voice their protests, and soon they seemed to be on the brink of a new war. High Wizard Zale himself stepped in. Had there not been enough fighting? They had both broken the pact of Jifuro to help their kinsman. Wearily he urged them to come to peace. But Elector refused. Breaking the pact would no longer be tolerated. He declared that he would conquer the Outlands and try to restore the magic to them. And the people of Selenheim would learn their place as infidels for their past sins. Would the people of Mekalon succeed in conquering the remaining Dregatar and restore magic and peace to the soil? Or would they become like the enemy that had just been defeated? Only time would tell. But that is another story, to be told another time.